If you remember back to probably 2 years ago, they started a program that said members of the congregation got up and did an impact statement about what it did, what First Presbyterian Church has done for them. And there were a lot of people that volunteered to do that work. And I never did it, and I want to do it now before it's preceding words before my sermon, okay? I want you to know that before this, we went to Calvary Presbyterian Church at Barnum. We're members there. And Calvary was kind of it was a dying congregation, okay? It was full of older people, and truthfully, they just kept dying, you know? And when my wife joined the church, when we got married, she was the youngest person in the church, and she was in her 30s, okay? So we were old, and our kids at the end were the only children in the church. And when we started coming here, it was for the kids to have a youth group but we just did that for the kids. And I always said that Calvary Church operated more as a family than it did as a church, because we were all of the same thought process. We were all in the same aging situation. Everything was the same. We operated like a family that had no fight, no quarrels, no anything. Everything we did was more designed toward mission and outwards in the church, and we had no actually internal activities in our church. And when we started attending here, it was because it was a Presbyterian denomination. And I always said that when we were looking for another church, I wanted a church that had family. I wanted a church that was like family. But from the very early stages of our attendance, clear back, it would have been when Jeff Martin was pastor, there always seemed to be church-related happenings that caused conflict, and there were associated problems both with clergy and the members in the congregation. And at the same time, because I was involved as a lay pastor in other area churches and I was preaching elsewhere, it meant that our attendance here was not regular. And as a family, we were really not fully involved in this church. And then things kind of stayed the same, but as we went through the COVID time frame, that's a scourge that I now consider to be totally the work of the devil. It didn't change my perception a whole lot of this church, except that as a family, we were regularly attending here, and we were worshiping here. And I had joined the choir. But still, that utopia church that I was looking for, that I called family, somehow wasn't evident to me. And I'll be the first now to admit that the picture that I saw of FPCFD was a limited view, and probably I looked at it through poor optics, okay? So when the Member Impact series started, to be truthful, I thought it was a poorly designed image enhancer for the church in an effort to kind of move past COVID and all of the negative things that had, and they wanted people to think good about our church again and get attendance going and everything. And I was asked 3 different times by 3 different people to participate in that. But at the time frame, my mind and my understanding was not in that place, and I said no. But we were still here at worship, and I listened to those impact statements. And the first one that kind of knocked at me was when I heard Eileen Verbrugge tell about how church members and clergy that she hardly knew helped carry her through very rough times in her life that included an unplanned pregnancy. And then they were there for her as events unfolded in the years to come after that. Now, to be true, this happened many years ago in the church, but it enlightened me to family that was once evident here. And then, in no particular order, I heard Lori Johnson speak about church people who she had known since her youth, that she considered to have been family to her and a help to her in her life and her walk with God and Jesus in this church. And I heard Richard Banks relate how, knowing no one in this church, that he walked into his first worship service, and men of this church came alongside of him to make him feel welcome, and in effect become family to him in this, his new church home. And I hope I don't get emotional. There have been several very impactful stories that came through this series to me. But one of the most life-altering to me was given by Lizzie Crowley. Lizzie related how a family member guided her to First Presbyterian Church, and here she met more family. But the most very little thing that Lizzie said was when she told me the significance of a hug. A hug. Yeah, a hug. Up until that time, I was a handshake person. Okay? Let's keep our distance. Nice to see you. Okay? And I had family members that were huggers. And it's like, oh, I'm going to have to hug them. Yeah, okay, I'll hug you, but can we get it over with? You know? To me, hugs were something that were unavoidable, but I put up with them. But all the emotion that I needed to convey came in that handshake, okay? This is who I am. And then listening to Lizzie, I started to understand that a hug can convey care and concern and love. All the traits that I consider to be evident in a good family. And looking back, maybe I didn't find family here because I wasn't being family. And as I look around now, I see family everywhere. The men who work in the wheelchair ministry, the ladies who sew quilts, the choir and the praise team singers and the musicians, and Linda and all of the helpers in her kitchen who work on special occasions when food is involved and on Wednesdays at the all-ages dinner. The clergy and the office staff who are never slow to provide help to me when I need it. How many of you listening to me here today ever received or had a family member who received a birthday wish from Eileen Magruder? Yeah, that's family, okay? That's family. I'm sure I'm not aware of all the family relationships that are intact in this congregation, but when I learned the significance of a good hug and started trying to be family, I found family. Now, don't get me wrong, I still shake hands, okay? some habits die hard. And I know that because everyone here is human, just like me, conflict and personal differences can happen. But this congregation has family in its traits. And I say this knowing that after several years in this church, I still don't know everyone in this church. I became aware of that when Janelle Grodelucian stood up here last week or the week before and told us about the search committee, and she named who was on it, and it's like, I don't know them all. That's my next mission, is to get to know my family.